This is Adam Goodman here with us on set. Traveled with us to Cuba back in March. So where do we start off, Marissa?
Let's talk about the embargo. You talked about how it wasn't working when we were back in Cuba. Right. When do you think, and do you think this should be lifted?
Well, first of all, thank God, we're now moving into another period in Cuba's history. I think that's one we really want to turn the page on, all of us. What's going to be interesting is to see what the president-elect does, the master deal maker. I mean, I'm sure he looked at the Cuba deal, as he did the Iran deal, as lousy, and he wants to redo it. The question is, how to redo it? Looking at, the evidence of an embargo that frankly has not worked well for the last umpteen years. I think we have to do something there. I think there's going to be a lot of tough talk, but at the end of the day, the president-elect, I believe, is going to try to strike a more appropriate deal or tell Fidel Castro and his government to take a hike.
What's the timetable? At what point would he refreeze if you don't get a deal with Cuba?
Hard to say. Hard to say, but I think you have an opening only for so long, even though it's been over 50 years of this dictatorship, and I think the opening is now. And as we saw, Craig, when we were there in Cuba, the Cuban people are really thirsting for change. And I think finally the curtain has been pulled back and they have a chance to get there.
We also have a recount underway, or the process beginning in 3 states.
Why not?
Why not, right? Not
right.
Florida this time. Does this have any chance at all?
Not really, but look at what's happening. You have the margins right now in Pennsylvania are 60-some thousand, 23,000 in Wisconsin, and 12,000 in Michigan. And so you're talking about basically 100,000 votes.
Yeah. That
could have completely thrown the election the other way. Obviously, you also know that Hillary Clinton is still up in the popular vote by over 2 million. It's not going anywhere, though. Ultimately, number one, you have the rules that they're fighting. Wisconsin, for instance, they have to certify the election results by the 13th of December. The electors have to meet by the 19th to validate, or else Wisconsin's electoral votes may not count. It's even worse in Pennsylvania, where you need to have 3 people per precinct to kind of come together and protest, to have all precincts go into what would then be a full recount. Not likely, but Jill Stein has gotten more press in the last week than she did, running for president for a full year.
I know we hammered you with this on a couple of weeks ago, talking about predictions for the cabinet. Do you see anything else in the future here in the near future?
Well, the greatest cabinet post Derby, of course, has become Secretary of State. I'm on record as having a lot of reservations about Mitt Romney, because not only was he bitter during the primary towards the president-elect, he was bitter all the way through. And his foreign policy, credentials and record are kind of unknown. And I'm kind of a big Rudy Giuliani supporter, because I think he's kind of made for this position, intelligent, intuitive, and ready to move. However, this has now come down to this kind of decision. The president-elect can either try to show presidential maturity, and hands across the political seas, and trying to embrace someone like Romney while taking on a lot of grief from his own base, or he can remember what he ran against, why he ran for president in the first place, which was he was running against the system. Mitt Romney is the system. So where does he fall on this? I think his presidency, his early presidency, the early marks, will largely be reflected in the kind of decision he makes here. Now, maybe he doesn't select either Mitt Romney or Rudy Giuliani. He goes to a third corner like General Petraeus, who I think is very qualified to be a great pick, Corker, Rohrabacher, others that have been mentioned. But wow, Secretary of State, suddenly we went from the Secretary of State who ran for president to a Secretary of State derby, where I think it's all up in the air.
Now, you've done some work for Rudy Giuliani in the past, have you not?
I have.
You've advised him. How would you advise him in terms of going around and talking up his credentials publicly of Secretary of State? Is that a good idea or bad idea?
Horrible idea. It's very tough to audition for something this public without looking overly hungry for it. You almost want to be drafted. It's ultimately, that's how you want to get there. Though I think Rudy Giuliani's credentials are well known in terms of what he would bring. He would truly reflect what I think would be an emerging Trump doctrine. However, Mitt Romney, the thing that's most attractive, I think, for his supporters is, and I think maybe for president-elect, they see this as a person who comes from business and who may be a tremendous deal maker. You talk about someone as Secretary of State who can maybe put together strong deals. Mitt Romney maybe is fairly strong on that front, and that makes this even more interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Adam Goodman, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Always.